If you're one of the ones saying, hey, this guy looks like he's just having a pity party because he failed Ranger School, I'm here to tell you that this is more than just my struggle with failing Ranger School. This is about leadership and trying to have an open conversation about what makes a true leader.
Now, Ranger School does teach soldiers to push through pain, suffering, and adversity. I never claimed that it didn't. What I've been calling into question is the Ranger School boasting that it is the premier leadership school of the United States Army. Now, if we are only going to measure a leader based on how much they've suffered, then I believe that I would be considered a much better leader than the majority of Ranger School officers. Now, hear me out. Most infantry officers that fail Ranger School, they fail at Rap Week. That wasn't me. Pushed right through that, went to Darby, and then I went multiple times through the mountain phase. I saw different struggles and stuff like that. I made other videos about that, so I'm not going to talk too much. But the point is, I was sent home, and I had to go to my unit without a Ranger tab. At that point, I experienced way more struggle and way more adversity than any of the officers that went through Ranger School. And I experienced basically the same amount of school as probably your average Ranger School student. So I definitely experienced that. But then the added pressure, the added adversity, being in a toxic unit, being called out, name called, the humiliation, and everything else that piled on top of me means that I had more adversity to deal with than most other Ranger tabbed officers. But here's the thing. Leadership is not just measured by how much suffering that you've been through. Leadership, in my opinion, you need other qualities. You need to be able to work effectively with teams. You need to treat people with respect and actually earn their respect. Listen, like in the business world, I might not have like a huge amount of experience leading high-level teams in the corporate world, but I can still confidently tell you that businesses really don't care about a lot of the things that Ranger School taught, especially yelling at people and the things that I experienced, the toxic leaders and the disrespect that they showed me because they had a tab and I didn't. Businesses don't really care about that. What businesses are going to want to see is that you can communicate effectively. They're not going to want to see you boasting about qualifications like whether you can run faster, you have a Ranger tab, this and that. They care about emotional intelligence. They care about whether you treat people with kindness. They care about empathy. They definitely care about performance as well. And Ranger School is a very performance-based school, but it's not a highly effective leadership school, in my opinion, unless it is combined with the other types of skills that you need to develop, the interpersonal skills, things of that nature. That's what businesses care about. Now, for me, I did serve in different roles as a leader in the civilian world, maybe not high-level corporate or anything like that. I've just chosen different paths, but I did have worked multiple times as a summer and a spring camp counselor at a parkour and ninja gym. And in that role, I'm working with kids that are ages 5 to 15 years old. And I had to try to inspire them to follow me as I teach them a variety of different skills, whether it is trampoline, parkour, gymnastics things, games, challenges, activities. And if I was just yelling at them and using these outdated leadership, philosophies that the Ranger School has, not only would it not have worked and they would not have been inspired to follow me, but I probably would have been fired from too many HR complaints. I'll give you another example. I worked as an assistant cross-country coach for a high school team where I had to try to inspire confidence in young athletes as they worked on their long-distance goals. Do you think that these athletes would have followed or listened to anything that I said if I showed up trying to, let's just say, tell them that I'm faster? I could run a 5K in 17 minutes and many of them couldn't. Do you think that they would have listened if I was boasting about my accomplishments or if I was just trying to yell at them because they couldn't run as fast as me? No. I mean, the answer is, of course, they're not going to listen. And again, I probably would have been fired. I'll give you a third example. I worked as a wilderness guide at a place called Philmont Scout Ranch. This was a number of years ago. So in this role, I had to lead groups of young Boy Scouts ages 14 to 18 on treks through the rugged Rocky Mountains of New Mexico. And in that role specifically, I had to use a lot of different leadership principles, but also teach them a variety of different skills. I had to teach them how to respond to lightning, what to do if you encounter a bear or a mountain lion on the trail, land navigation, first aid, purifying water, and a number of other tasks. And there was 2 adult leaders with us on the trek. And by the end of the 3rd day, I had to inspire that adult leader to sign off a book that showed that I taught all of these different skills. And I'm telling you right now that if I was just yelling at these Boy Scouts the whole time, bragging to them about my accomplishments, whatever it may be, none of them would have wanted to follow me. And the adult leader probably would have said that we're giving up and they wouldn't have done the rest of their trek. My point, though, with all of these examples is that leadership is a lot more than just suffering. It's a lot more than some of these toxic behaviors that I've seen in Ranger tabbed officers. Even if they have a qualification that might work in combat, it definitely might work for sure. If you're in a combat role, maybe it's been tested that yelling at people and doing these different things might be an effective measure in high stress scenarios. I never called that into question, but it's definitely a very outdated philosophy if we're talking about real world leadership. And that's what I see over and over again, is that the Army and the Ranger School continually wants to pound it into my head when I was a young officer that you need to get back to Ranger School. And the reason is because it's the premier leadership school. And that's an outdated philosophy. It might work for combat, but they weren't saying that it was the premier combat school. They were saying that it was the premier leadership school. So that's what I'm calling into question. And, brings me to my final kind of point here. There are many Ranger tabbed officers that are relying on that bullet point that shows that they passed the prestigious U.S. Army Ranger School, and it probably says in parentheses, Premier Leadership School, U.S. Military or U.S. Army. And I think it is very valid for someone like me who's met plenty of these officers. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them treated me with high levels of disrespect. Many of them were extremely arrogant, not humble at all. And I experienced that culture, and I experienced the school itself, and I know what they teach there. So I think it's very valid for me to share my personal experiences and thoughts about why I don't believe it's a true leadership school. I do want to hear from you guys for sure. I do want this to continue to be an open conversation. There has been so much positive feedback, and I really appreciate that. So many just overwhelming support, people coming from all different branches, military, non-military. It's been awesome to read all that. With that, there's also been plenty of negative stuff and trolls. And I'm going to try the best I can to just leave everything and just let people say what they say, unless it's like something really ridiculous. But I'm going to tell you right now that if your only comment, below is that, hey, Ranger School is a leadership school because the military says it is, and it's been that way for decades, so you're wrong. Well, I'm going to tell you that it's outdated. And if your only comment is that Ranger School is the premier leadership school because it's hard and it puts you through adversity, then come on, you just set me up. I'm going to once again tell you that that's not enough. But let's have a conversation, and I hope I hear from you all, and you guys can subscribe for more.